As a video editor of over 20 years, I want to share some of the lesser known insights that have benefited me and my work that I picked up along the way. And just to kind of preface it overall, editing, of course, is a technical skill, but it means nothing when you don't apply those technical skills towards something that is a little bit intangible, right? We're, of course, talking about storytelling and the craft that goes into that. So, my background began in documentary work. Then, when I was at Emerson College, I had the privilege of being mentored under Kevin S. Bright. He's one of the executive producers of Friends, and he did a class on sitcoms, and we basically got to make a sitcom from start to finish. So I got to sit with him in the edit bay, and then I've gone on to do features, sizzles, and things of that nature, and of course, online content since that time. So this is where that knowledge is coming from, and just kind of gives you a little bit of a framing. So, number one, don't edit for continuity, right? Oftentimes, like people think that they're clever when they notice continuity errors and stuff like that, but most of the time that's on like viewing number 50 as opposed to the first one. If a story is good and you're invested in it emotionally, then a lot of things continuity-wise can be forgiven. And in fact, if you break down the science of actual cuts, even when you're like matching something like that is supposed to, like, you don't need to cut around continuity. Let's say it's someone getting up from a chair and you go from a medium shot to then a wide shot. Well, guess what? If you literally cut on the exact position that they end at from the outgoing shot to the incoming shot, it's going to feel weird. And there's a great book called The Eye is Quicker that talks about this phenomenon as well as other great things. So never cut for continuity, okay? Keep it in mind, of course, but that shouldn't dictate the cut. Speaking of that, as a subset, guess what? One of the things that Kevin S. Bright taught me was that you never need to see people leave, right? So if you ever watch Friends, there's oftentimes like if someone's leaving the apartment, there'll be a character, let's say Ross, and he says goodbye, and let's say he's at one end of the apartment, but he's leaving. So you'll cut to he'll make one sort of joke or whatever, then you'll cut to some reactions. And then by the time you see Ross, it's like a second or two later, and he's at the complete opposite end of the room, right? You don't need to see people in real time. You can compress that, and that's what editing is meant to do. So another example of don't cut for continuity, because a person can't get in 1 second from there to there unless they're literally running. Now, when it comes to documentary work, one of the things that I do first and foremost is edit for the story. And that means leaving B-roll alone. B-roll to me is like your production value in a documentary. It brings everything that's being talked about to life. But I think too many people spend too much time on B-roll first and getting that all finessed when the story itself is not working yet. And so, and by the way, when I say documentary, that also implies like a sizzle reel, a hosting reel, anything of that nature, where pick the clips first. And what I do for that is my first point of order is making sure I pull all the things that are accessible to me. Then I'll lay it out in a timeline. I'll go through it and select the moments that I know to keep. For the story, other stuff that might be good B-roll later, I'll mark that up. So I'm just kind of going through and organizing everything. And then once I have that, then I start watching it and, deleting anything that's not worthy. And I'm just kind of finessing until I get to the right runtime of it and so forth. So, and once that's locked, then I bring in B-roll and so forth. So that's for documentary specifically. Next one. Whenever you're editing something, It's kind of like a form of ADR where you take a different take of someone and place it for a visual take that isn't it exactly. So in sitcoms, they employ this technique. Sometimes there's a better line read of something, but visually it's better in a different take. And yeah, it doesn't always necessarily match up to their lips 1000%. But again, go back to that idea that you're not necessarily cutting for continuity. And so what you lose in terms of that continuity, like the distinction generally will be that it's like a fraction of a second that the lips don't match. You take that audio and you shove it underneath that visual take, and it works. And you'd be amazed at how many times this has been done in various sitcoms and so forth. And that audio performance from a different take is better and then visual take. And so you're just making the best two choices for a particular moment and heightening it. To that effect, now as we've gotten better with technology and stuff like that, you can make the sync even better. And what I recommend instead of ADR, whether, for movies, but it can also be for TV shows, on set, always do an audio only take. This is primarily for dialogue, so that way you just have a clean version no matter what, because sometimes, you don't have the best sounding audio from a production take, right? Sometimes we prioritize visuals more than the audio or something happened. And so if you just do a clean audio take, you can also do this if something got stepped on or whatever else. So this is a trick that I like to employ both in production and then obviously on the editing side where I'll use different audio takes. And by the way, it's super easy to take a different audio take that you like when you're over someone's shoulder, right? So when their back is to camera, that's an easy time to steal a different line for a different performance because you're not having to sync to their mouth, right? Next up, reactions really do make the laugh. So if you're going for something more comedic, you have to have good reaction shots in that way. Because it's oftentimes the straight character that is the center, and their reaction to, let's say, the chaos around them will kind of dictate for the audience, those things. And even if they're all kind of goofy characters, I'm thinking of, let's say, like Austin Powers, that's a comedy movie, and they're all pretty ridiculous. You still need some sort of reaction shot. And if you watch those movies, you get that, right? And so be mindful of the reaction shot. And partly it also allows for that timing of the laugh of the audience before you move on to the next thing and so forth. Next up, physical humor and physicality in general needs wider shots. I think too many times, especially on the indie side, directors fall in love with these close-ups and these kind of, brooding shots and things like that. But that doesn't communicate, especially in a comedy or the physicality. You need to go wider, at least a medium shot, in order to convey like what is happening, right? And then you can cut to the close-up of a reaction, sure, but you want to see the physicality happen. So don't be afraid to use those wider shots for those moments. And next up, story matters most, not the shots. So, there some, like, oftentimes there might be scenes where there's a lot of different angles, especially more on the narrative side, where you feel like, oh, I have to use that because they shot it, then it should get used. And guess what? If something is working in a single take within a scene, you don't. Or if you're using 3 out of the 6, whatever it is, don't be a slave just because there's more shots. Now, hopefully, all the coverage that was gone had a particular purpose. There's this notion of, what would you call it? Like losing the shot. So Martin Scorsese talks about this with modern filmmaking, is that they've lost the shot. Meaning, if there's like, in particular with action scenes, they'll often just take like 8 cameras and film it, and whatever they get, they'll throw in a blender. That's a more proper term for what, it's blender editing. They'll take these shots and they'll just edit it into whatever is meant to be conveyed. But it loses the shot because there's not really an intention, that those 8 cameras were just meant to grab whatever, and then you're blending it together to create something that wasn't really intentional. And so my point is that hopefully whatever you're working on, there was more intention, and that each of the shots gotten was there because it's meant to convey something and stuff like that. But if you do end up, whether, it can be an action scene, but it could be anything else, where you just have all these random shots, you don't have to feel compelled to use it. And that's another sort of big lesson. The audience never knows the mistakes or what the intention was on set or the original script. They only know the final product, which can be a detriment, but it could also be an asset, because all the things that didn't work, guess what? You get to finesse and hone and take that out, and you're just left with whatever does ultimately work. And the last sort of tip I'll leave you on is that, your initial edit will be, for the most part, not so great. At first, it's going to kind of be like, oh, did we get anything good here, and things like that. But I promise it'll get better over time. With that initial first edit, you have to kind of go through that grind, and don't just be putting in crutches of like special editing tricks, or especially music. A lot of people put music to lift up a scene and things like that, as opposed to seeing what it is just without the music. Because of course music is going to help a scene, but you're putting on a crutch. You want to see how well the scene works without that stuff, and then music will only enhance what's there, as opposed to being that crutch. So these are just kind of the things that I've learned. Of course, there's others and things like that, and happy to share them in future episodes. But what I'd be curious from your perspective is, what are you running into in potential issues? What might be your questions? What are things you've learned? I'd love to, gain from you as you gain from me, right? Like, this is a symbiotic relationship in that sense. So go ahead, comment down below. And thank you so much for tuning in. I hope these benefit you as they have benefited my work.
If you found something useful, consider subscribing, liking, commenting, and sharing with friends. And you can explore my films, books, and writing at svitek.com. And if you want deeper access, direct interaction, and ways to support my creative work, I have a Patreon page. Everything's linked in the description. However you engage, thanks for being a part of it.